there, Vikings fans. This is Tatum Everett inside TCO Studios, and you're watching Opposing Viewpoints, where we bring in an expert from the other team, and we talk about the big matchup leading up to Sunday. The Vikings look to get back on track after an 0-1 start, and they take on a 1-0 Cardinals team on the road. Let's bring in the other member of the show, Vikings team reporter Eric Smith, who will provide our analysis from the purple and gold side of things today. How's it going?
It's going good. It's going pretty well. Obviously, an 0-1 start, not how we want to start the season, and there's certainly a lot of work to do to avoid an 0-2 hole for the second straight season.
Yeah, and that's what you're here for, to hopefully put a positive spin on how we can turn those mistakes but into better plays, better play, better game wins. But on the other side of things, though, is a very tough Cardinals team. So we bring in the other expert into the show, Darren Urban, the senior writer for the Cardinals. Darren, you've been covering the team for 22 years now. You've been there since 2007. Thank you so much for joining us today.
I appreciate you having me.
Well, just describing how long you've been with the team means you've crossed paths with now one of the Vikings captains on the team, Patrick Peterson. This is his much-awaited return, albeit it feels like he had just left Arizona. And now he's a captain here in Minnesota, which obviously speaks volumes about his character. During your time there, or when he was there, what is the impact that he has made?
I think with Patrick, I mean, you're talking about a guy, you know, I covered him from the time he came into the league, drafted in 2011. I mean, he made an instant impact. He was a Pro Bowl player for his first 8 seasons, All-Pro a couple of times. I mean, he was everything that you would expect that a elite cornerback would be, and he anchored some very good defenses and was a big reason that this team was able to advance to the NFC Championship game in 2015. And he was always the guy that everybody was talking about, okay, who's going to play opposite of him? Every year was, okay, we have Patrick Peterson as the number 1 cornerback, who's going to be the number 2 cornerback? And so it's very strange to be starting a season here, not only without Patrick, but without Minnesota's other person, Larry Fitzgerald, obviously Larry being from there. But it's been very strange not having Patrick around and not having him in the defensive backfield. And it's going to be extra strange to see him on the other sideline this week because he was such an integral part of this team and this defense for so long.
Yeah, I bet it will.
Well, Darren, it may be weird for you, but I can say from the Vikings side, we are happy to have Patrick here. As Tatum said, he is a captain, he is a leader, and he's already kind of pulled this defense along. He looked good in week 1, and a couple of players today, Adam Thielen and Eric Kendrick, both had lots of praise for Patrick and his leadership style. Even Thielen, who's been around the league for a while, said he's still learning different tips and techniques of how he can become a better player in the NFL, and that's certainly what Patrick has brought to the Vikings so far.
Yeah, he has been a very...
Well,
Oh, no, go ahead, Darren.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say, it doesn't surprise me at all because that's who Patrick has always been, is a guy who's going to lead and a guy who's going to step in and try and help out his teammates. And I know he had some kind of a rough ending here in Arizona, but I think that's always who he's been.
Yeah, he spoke today just about how it's just going to be another game for him. That will not be the case for the fans. I expect a warm welcome from him, from those in Arizona. Last week, the Cardinals smacked the Titans at home 38-13. They contained one of the high-scoring offenses from last season to that score in their home stadium. Even Titans left tackle Taylor Lewan admitted that he got smacked around by Chandler Jones, but thanked him very graciously for exposing him. You know, he did give one of the highest paid left tackles in the league pestering, but do you expect much of the same against the O-line again with the Vikings, Darren?
I mean, I guess that's a question probably better served for the offensive coordinator of the Vikings and what Kirk Cousins is going to see and do. I mean, I know that J.J. Watt talking this week mentioned the fact at one point, because we were talking about how defenses have to either worry about Chandler Jones on one side or J.J. Watt on the other, and maybe this opens some things up for J.J. Watt this week if the Vikings focus more on Chandler Jones. And J.J. Watt admitted, you know, after 3 sacks in the very first quarter, the Cardinals kept waiting for the Titans to do more with Chandler Jones in terms of giving Taylor Lewan or whoever was trying to block him some help, and they never did. So I guess, you know, again, we'll have to see what the Vikings do. But I know that after watching Chandler Jones all through training camp and seeing him in fantastic shape, knowing the motivation he has because he is in the last year of his contract and desperately wants an extension, and then watching him get 5 sacks last week, I know if I was the Vikings, I would be very concerned about what he was going to do to my quarterback.
And just after watching that highlight reel while you were talking, it's a very intimidating thing to see. But just how good was his performance against the Titans that day? Well, check this out. It's the fastest sacks of week 1. Chandler Jones has 3 of the top 8, the fastest being 2.24 seconds. Eric, that is barely enough time for me to blink my eyes and open them up again, let alone throw a football to a target down the field. What do the Vikings need to do to contain Jones and that rush?
Yeah, I think Darren said it best. It's certainly a concern, and that's something that everyone associated with the Vikings has already talked about this week, whether it's Mike Zimmer, whether it's Clint Kubiak, Garrett Bradbury, the center. Everyone has said, you know what? It's easy to put Chandler Jones at the top of the list in terms of people we need to key on. And J.J. Watt is also there, as Darren said. So you almost have to pick your poison a little bit. But if you're the Vikings offensive line, you're certainly preparing and scheming for the opposite side of the ball. But after what we saw in week 1, I think the focus needs to be on them too. And as we see there, mistake-free football, the Vikings got to kind of clean it up a little bit. They had 10 penalties in the first half alone against Cincinnati. 9 were on the offense, and it was not a good start. I mean, when it's 2nd and 20, 3rd and 20, it's tough to get your offense going. The offensive line was behind a lot of that. So if they can clean that up and stop Chandler Jones, which again is a very tall task, hopefully that leads to a better overall offensive performance in Arizona.
Now, the Cardinals offense, not a slouch either, scoring 38 points, led by quarterback Kyler Murray and his plethora of weapons at his disposal. We talk about DeAndre Hopkins and Christian Kirk, but Rondale Moore, maybe there are more weapons out there, Darren?
When they drafted Rondale Moore in the 2nd round, and they drafted Andy Isabella in the 2nd round a couple years ago to be this kind of player, and Andy Isabella has not worked out, but Rondale Moore they're hoping will be, which is a guy who can get loose in space, make guys miss, and kind of be that quick hitter kind of receiver that, quite frankly, Cliff Kingsbury wants in his offense. And when you pair it with DeAndre Hopkins, and you got A.J. Green serving a purpose as an outside receiver, allowing Christian Kirk to be a slot receiver, which he's better in. I just think right now, as long as they stay healthy, you've got to love the weapons they have. And one of the things Moore has done, too, has given Cliff Kingsbury a chance to, he's actually doing some pre-snap motion, some in-snap motion that we didn't see a lot about last year. And I just think that those are the kinds of little wrinkles that I think will help this offense all over the place.
A lot of weapons to deal with, Eric.
Yeah, a lot of weapons to deal with on the offensive side of the ball, too, for Arizona. And, we mentioned Hopkins and Christian Kirk and A.J. Green and Rondale Moore. So that's 4 wide receivers. So then you look at the Vikings cornerbacks and say, okay, who's going to step up for them? We know Patrick Peterson will be ready to play. Mackenzie Alexander will man the slot. So that means all eyes will probably be on BREELAND, who also needs to kind of bounce back after a rough game. And Bashad owned it. He's a veteran. He talked earlier this week and said, hey, it's on me. I didn't play as well as I needed to in week 1. Cost the team. He obviously had a pass interference call that led to a touchdown. He gave up a 50-yard touchdown to rookie Jamar Chase. And he just said on that touchdown, he just kind of turned the wrong way a little bit. If he turns the other way, it's probably an interception and not a big play allowed. So there's certainly a lot to clean up. I know we're kind of going through a long list here, but after you lose the first game and you start 0-1, you certainly want to correct these mistakes quickly because you certainly don't want to fall into an 0-2 hole. That certainly makes your playoff odds pretty low to start off the season. So, whether it's Peterson or Alexander or BREELAND, everyone's going to kind of need to be on their game against, as we've mentioned before, this plethora of really good Cardinals wide receivers.
The Vikings are going into this game as 5-point underdogs, and that's a hot number. So I need to get a hot take from you, Darren. Minnesota coming to town. What is your hot take for this matchup?
I think, and I'm probably not really making this too hot after what we saw the Cardinals do last week, but I think they're going to be able to sack Kirk Cousins at least 5 times. Now, I'm not saying Chandler Jones is going to get all 5 of those, but this pass rush has been really good over the last year. And last year, Chandler Jones only had 1 sack before getting a season-ending injury in week 5, and yet Vance Joseph was able to create a pass rush out of a bunch of guys that nobody was expecting it from, and they were 6th in the league in sacks. And now you add back in Chandler Jones, you add J.J. Watt, and this pass rush just is really good right now. And if they can stay healthy, they will remain good. And so I think that they will be able to get to Kirk Cousins. He's not exactly a big-time scrambler. He does get the ball out, but I do think they'll find a way to get Kirk Cousins at least 5 times.
That hot take, not dry like the heat back there in Arizona. So, Eric, can you measure up to it?
I will try. I know it gets hot out there for sure. I'm an Arizona State grad. My hot take is that KJ Osborne is going to catch his first touchdown of his career. And he showed up big last week against the Bengals, 7 catches for 76 yards. And what we saw last week, the Vikings played more 3 and 4 wide receiver sets than we've really seen before in the last couple of years. We know this is a run-first offense. A lot of that had to do with the fact it was, like I said, 2nd and long, 3rd and long, or we were trailing in the game. We had to throw a lot to catch up. Mike Zimmer said this week, if we have to throw it 50 times, that's not how we're built. That's not how we want to win games. But in saying that, we know the Cardinals are going to focus on Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. And Osborne looked great in training camp, in the preseason. I think this is his time to step up and shine, and he will find the end zone for the first time in his career.
Yeah, it was nice to see an emergence of a dominant wide receiver number 3. Maybe dominant, not the right word, but good to see the distinction in the role. But now it's time for me to ask you to be a little bit like Miss Cleo, give me some fortune telling, predictions, all that kind of stuff. So we'll start with Darren. The Cardinals win if?
I'm going to say the Cardinals are going to win if they can hold Dalvin Cook down to 75 yards or less rushing. Last week, one of the big things that they did was totally stone Derrick Henry, who got no kind of traction. He ended up with 58 yards, but 19 was on a carry in the second half when it was really meaningless. And earlier in the game, the very first play was a 3-yard loss. Chandler Jones took him down for a 3-yard loss. And they built that big lead because the Titans couldn't do anything on the ground. And obviously Dalvin Cook and Derrick Henry are slightly different runners, but the Cardinals see them both as keys to these offenses. And, whether they can contain Dalvin Cook, we will find out. But I believe that if they can hold him down to a certain level, they will find a way to get this win.
Definitely can see that. Well, there we go. Eric, what about the Vikings? They win if?
I'm going to say the Vikings win if they can win the big play battle. And we know how explosive the Cardinals offense can be. We've listed all the wide receivers. We haven't even talked about Kyler Murray, who can run all over the field, literally, sideline to sideline, throw the ball, run the ball. The Vikings have had a lot of praise for his quickness and speed. They've referred to him as a video game character. Mike Zimmer called him unorthodox and said there's really no one like him. So the Vikings defense is going to have to be ready to go and always be aware to give up those big plays. And on the flip side, the Vikings need to make more big plays than they did last week. If this turns into a shootout, that might favor Arizona. But if it is, that means the Vikings are going to have to keep up too and score some points. Arizona scored 38 last week. The Vikings scored 24 in 70 minutes of play in overtime. I think it's time for the offense to pick it up a little bit. And if it is a shootout, they're going to have to make some big plays.
Well, we will see how it all plays out on Sunday when the Vikings hit the road, trying to avoid that dreaded 0-2 start against the Cardinals. Thank you so much to Cardinals senior writer Darren Urban for joining us here on Opposing Viewpoints. Be sure to stay tuned to Vikings.com and the app for all of the content leading up to kickoff on Sunday. For Darren and Eric, I'm Tatum Everett. Have a nice evening. Hey, Darren, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you, Darren.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
You were fantastic.
All right, I'll talk to you guys later. Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See ya. Lord have mercy. Good evening. Who says that? Shut up. I hate you.